The first Disney movie I can remember watching is The Little Mermaid. I vividly remember being entranced by the visuals and music. While I have seen better Disney movies since then as well as some that came before, it helped give me a lifelong love of mermaids. My first OCs were a mermaid named Malu and her sea cat companion Yamcha. I always thought that mermaids were cool, but as I grew up I realized that they're also often beautiful. Of course, I soon learned that not all mermaids are nice. But, good or bad, mermaids always make a story more interesting for me. I look forward to anything featuring mermaids, and will even try a show just because it has a mermaid in an episode. I especially enjoy it when even the characters appreciate mermaids in-universe.
The children settled in with their new family very quickly. They frolicked and scampered amongst the mermaids. Mermaids? Mermaids? I never knew there were mermaids in this story. Boy, some people have all the luck.
The Little Mermaid is the most famous mermaid story. But did Disney make the best version of it? I may be a huge fan of various Disney things at least until the 2010s, but they don't always make the best adaptations. The Wind in the Willows on its own is fun, but it's nothing compared to the book or Cosgrove Hall's adaptation of it. Even as a kid when I saw Mowgli's Brothers on TV, I thought it was much better than Disney's Jungle Book. Sometimes they really do make the best versions though, like Aladdin, which not only had a great movie, it has quite possibly the best animated series based on a movie. Usually when I prefer the Disney version, it's because of its own merits. But then there are times where Disney's take pretty much wins by default, which is where The Little Mermaid comes in. I read the original story when I was 10, and it was one of my biggest childhood traumas. I hated everything about it. From its representation of mermaids as beings without souls to the ending where the Little Mermaid dies. I think the worst part was that as messed up as it got when she went to the sea, which I believed that somehow she was still going to live. I mean, the 3 Little Mermaid adaptations I had seen couldn't be completely wrong, could they?
Poor little Maroon. So trusting, so naive.
I still respect the opinion of people who prefer it. What I don't like is when people bash others for wanting the story to have a happy ending. There are many adaptations that are faithful to the original story, so it's not like there's a lack of them. People should be allowed to choose which version they enjoy and shouldn't get any flack for it. So, while I think that the Disney version is much better, is it the best version? I might be the only hater of the original story to say this, but for me the answer is no. Disney isn't the only game in town if you want to see a more pleasant version of the story. They weren't even the first to give The Little Mermaid a happy ending. That honor belongs to Shirley Temple's storybook.
And so the Little Mermaid returned to her family beneath the sea. Someday, perhaps, she would fall in love again. But already she had learned a profound lesson, that bringing happiness to those we love can be the most important way of loving them.
Of course, the Disney movies spawned a lot of knockoffs, and as bad as they could get, they can still have moments buried in them. For example, instead of getting a knife to kill the prince so that she can turn back into a mermaid, the Burbank version has the Little Mermaid sisters selling their hair to the Sea Witch in exchange for getting her voice back. It's such an imaginative and heartwarming idea. I wish that somebody would use it again in a better adaptation. But one of these cash-ins actually had so much heart put into it that it became my personal favorite straightforward version of the fairy tale. And that is the 1991 anime series, Saban's Adventures of the Little Mermaid. On the surface it seems like it exists only to capitalize on Disney's success, but even as a kid I could tell more effort went into this than any Disney knockoff or even Disney's own Little Mermaid show. It's my favorite mermaid series period, and I am happy to give it the full review it deserves, especially as it gets very rarely touched upon. So let's share all the wonders of this magical sea. As I intend to do with most of my reviews, let's cover at least some of the negatives before I get to the stuff that works. Like with many other anime series, the animation is pretty stiff. As much as I hate the Disney TV show, I have to admit the animation, while not as good as the movie, could still swim circles around Saban's. There are some really nice details like how Ariel's hair moves sometimes. That said, sometimes the animation in Saban's Little Mermaid is pretty good, and even when it's stiff, it still has that nice anime aesthetic with some great expressions at times. I prefer this sort of art style over Disney style, so that helps balance it out. I recommended this show to an artist friend of mine, and he said that he loves the color palette they used. There are some great moments of artistry with the backgrounds. I especially like this scene where the sea witch emerges from the water enraged and attacks the protagonist against an altered sky that resembles the warped spaces Sailor Moon would fight monsters in. There are also several times we see one of my all-time favorite anime tropes, villains getting a glint in their eye as they plot to do something sinister.
Egon, I've seen that look before. That's either horrified realization or your pizza's coming up.
The only area where the two shows are evenly matched is in voice acting, and that's saying a lot coming from me because over the years I have admittedly become something of a dub snob. Between watching countless anime, tokusatsu, movies, and even playing video games in Japanese with English subtitles, I have come to hate most English dubs. But that's not to say there aren't exceptions. Macron 1, the dub of my favorite 80s mecha anime Go Shogun, has some voice acting I still love even after seeing the original version.
Watch it, Macron! Hey, Blade, they're burning my back end up!
Getting a bit too warm for you?
Sorry about that, big and handsome.
Why, you little...
You had better watch your mouth, Charon, because if you don't, I'll wash it out with space grit.
I can only watch 2/3 of Robotech and the first 13 episodes of Dragon Ball dubbed and censored because they edit out the nudity. But I not only prefer the Funimation dub for Dragon Ball anyways, I also really enjoy the Robotech dub for its altered story as well as hearing more of the voice actors from Macron 1.
Ha! Just as I thought. We crashed into 4 ships total. You thought it would only be 3 at the most. I win the bet.
Be quiet, you fool! Our conversation is being broadcast!
Then there's dubs like Samurai Pizza Cats, which are just so much funnier than the original.
Let's wait here till they get back so you can return Speedy's poem that we found. Well, if this is poetry, I'd have to say that rhyme doesn't pay.
You're right, and neither did that atrocious pun, madam.
And finally, there are cases like with this show where we have no access to the Japanese version. It only aired on television in Japan during the early 90s and was never released to VHS or DVD, so we might never see it outside of the opening and closing. But that's not a horrible loss because this is one of my favorite English dubs. I had forgotten how good it was until I started watching it again for this review. As good as the voice cast is in Disney's Little Mermaid, it's only a superficial advantage when you've got great voice actors such as Tony Jay saying lines like this.
I am the magical wishing starfish.
Oh, please deliver me.
While there are a couple more negatives I have to save for later after I explain the series some, that's really all the bad stuff I have to say about Saban's Little Mermaid. I love this anime for its characters and writing, especially in comparison to the Disney series. My little sister watched it, but I could never get into it because being a prequel, that meant no matter what, the main characters were never in any real danger, otherwise the movie couldn't happen, sucking pretty much all the tension out of the conflicts.
That's very boring.
It's not impossible to do good prequels. I love the Metronuri saga and Bionicle because although you know the 6 heroes have to survive in order to become the village elders we saw in the first story arc, it was very interesting learning about the world beyond the island of Motunui. But even disregarding that, the writing in general always felt more juvenile than any of Disney's movies made at the time, with some moments that absolutely baffle me, like Ariel saving the life of the original Little Mermaid author, Hans Christian Andersen. What was Disney thinking with this tribute? She saves his life so he repays her by writing a story where she suffers horribly and dies, which also insults her entire race. He's even shown starting to read it to some kids. I like to think that this was their reaction later on.
What kind of story is this? We're just kids!
Then the ending narration encourages the viewers to go to the library and check out Mr. Anderson's works. It's insane that after trying to make people forget about the awful original ending, here they are practically recommending it. The more I watch this show, the more I appreciate the actual effort that went into Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders.
I called to him with my heartstone, and now he's gone. Is this what my heartstone brings?
So if Disney wasn't going to give me a good Little Mermaid series, I had to look elsewhere. Like many people do these days when Disney fails them, I turned to anime and was very lucky to find this show. Being its own thing instead of a prequel to a movie really made for a world of difference, and I was always happy to be part of that world. I mean, yeah, with almost any show, especially for this time period, you should know that the main characters aren't going to die, but even so, without a guaranteed future story overshadowing all the events, sometimes the show could get pretty intense.
Gee, I've never tasted anything like this before.
Well, maybe a bite or two wouldn't hurt. Oh, I've been eating this all my life. Grandmother makes the best sylphin pie in the sea. But just today, my father said that human beings are poisoned by sylphin. Oh, Justin!
This wasn't the only time Saban had a hand in a series that outdid Disney. They also distributed Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates, which is something I would love to do a review of in the future. It's my favorite version of Peter Pan for many reasons, including Tim Curry as Captain Hook in one of his best voice acting roles, which won him an Emmy.
Avast! Whatever you are, do you dare to trifle with James Hook, the only pirate whom barbecue feared?
I am going to cover the first 2 episodes in detail as they are the only real key episodes in the series. The rest of the show is so episodic that it can be watched out of order without missing much. We begin the series with Return to the Sea, an episode title so good Disney would use it for their Little Mermaid sequel almost a decade later. It starts off with some familiar beats of the story. The mermaid princess Marina saves the human prince Justin when a storm sinks his ship. After taking him to shore, she falls in love with him, but suddenly has to leave for fear of being seen by Princess Cecily, who Justin mistakes for his rescuer. She goes to the Sea Witch Hedwig in order to become human, and in addition to taking her voice as payment, she has a couple other conditions.
But if you're unable to marry him within a single month, your penalty will be death. That's because you're such a stupid little mermaid, you won't be able to remain human for any longer than a single month. But if anyone interferes, then the whole deal is off.
All right, then.
Marina accepts the deal and becomes human. Where the series really starts to deviate from the source material is with the introduction of 2 OCs, Justin's tutor Anselm and his pet otter Ridley, the former of whom somehow knows Marina's name. Justin invites Marina to his engagement party, and she runs off to confide in her seahorse companion Winnie. As she does so, she is looked down upon literally and figuratively by Cecily.
I certainly hope she doesn't expect to come to the engagement party.
I'm afraid Justin insists on it. He's formed quite an attachment to her, you know.
Well, it's certainly his privilege to invite whatever riffraff he wants, but I don't understand it.
Now, we mustn't be undemocratic about the peasants. I'm sure if the prince invited her, she must be very nice, dear.
In an ordinary way.
We find out how Anselm knew Marina's name. It turns out that he is actually a sorcerer and has vowed to never use his magic to interfere in the affairs of mankind despite Ridley's protest. At the engagement party, Justin dances with Cecily as Marina looks on until he begins to propose to her, and it becomes too much for her to bear. Ironically, right after she leaves, Justin remembers that Marina was the one who saved him. He runs after her, but is too late, for Marina has jumped back into the sea, crying because she's about to die of a broken heart, like in the original story as the show cuts to a commercial. Well, this is already more suspenseful than anything in the Disney series.